Hello again. Guess who I have with me? Woolly Mammoth, who is going to be here for story time with us. He's very excited. We have a very special book. We have a theme today. The theme is dragons. Yes, we have two books about dragons. One is called The Laughing Dragon, and the other is called Puff the Magic Dragon. So we'll start with The Laughing Dragon, which is a very, very fun story. And it takes place, I believe, in Japan. And you'll have to look where that is. Here is where we start, right here. On a cold autumn morning, a long time ago, the Emperor of Japan was about to eat his morning egg. It's a very big morning egg. When, snap, crackle, pop, out jumped a dragon. That sounds like a very exciting egg. And here we are. He seemed very friendly. So the emperor decided to call him Hojo and keep him as the imperial pet. Hojo soon became a great favorite with everyone by making himself useful around the palace. He made delicious soups, had a very light hand with pastry, and the emperor loved his pancakes. In addition, he was always gay and cheerful and could sing and play chess. Enjoy a joke, and his hot breath kept everyone in the palace warm, which was a great comfort to the emperor who suffered from cold feet. Oh, look at, there he is in the basement, and he heats up the emperor's cold feet right there. Hojo's hot breath, though, was a mixed blessing. Every time he laughed, flames shot in all directions. When anyone complained, the emperor always replied, "It's nothing. His breath is worse than his bite." As Hojo grew bigger and bigger, his breath became hotter and hotter, and more people got burnt. At last, a group of courtiers, still smoldering, appealed to the emperor for help. "He must be cured before we are all burnt to a cinder," they cried. So the emperor sent for the imperial physician. I wonder what will happen next. The imperial physician fitted Hojo with a muzzle, but it didn't work. He tried to put the flames out with buckets and buckets of medicine that turned into steam. Finally, he gave him 100 anti-laughing pills, but they only turned hot in his stomach, and he coughed them out and laughed more than ever. Who would ever want an anti-laughing pill? I don't know. Although the emperor had cold feet, he had a warm heart, and he wanted to keep Hojo despite the flame-throwing habit. But when the palace caught on fire, he had to give the order for Hojo to be sent to a place where he could do no harm. "I hate to do this," he called, "but your trouble is that you only see the funny side of life." Hojo was left on a bleak, fireproof island, and his friends, far away from Japan, the emperor and all his friends. It wasn't true, he thought, that if you laughed, the whole world laughed with you. Beware, laughing dragon. This might be the saddest part of the whole book. Hojo was feeling very doleful when he met a turtle called George. "Who's the laughing dragon?" he asked. "I am," replied Hojo. "You mean you were?" said George. "I have never seen anyone more gloomy." "You would be sad too if they sent you to an island just because you were laughing so much," said Hojo, and told George the whole story. "You should always look before you laugh," murmured George, and he ducked into his shell just as Hojo started to chuckle. That night, George was lucky. He had a shell to sleep in, for Hojo slept tucked up with his blanket, dreaming of his happy days in Japan. He laughed so much that he lit up the night sky and sprinkled George with sparkles. Although Hojo missed Japan, George kept him from feeling miserable. Each day they lay in the sun and toasted homemade muffins, and Hojo's breath was so warm that the island soon became covered in exotic flowers and migrating birds from Japan. The birds were full of gossip. "The Japanese are having the worst winter in over 100 years. They chirped. "Everyone is freezing. There are icicles on the emperor's toes." Hojo was very depressed. "If I could go back now, I could keep my friends warm," he told George. "Only if you learn to control yourself," said George. "You will have to practice breath control and try holding your breath. I will tell you sad stories to prevent you from laughing." Look at how many birds came to visit. They all like a good laughing dragon. As George told sad stories, Hojo found he could hold his breath quite easily. And slowly, he got fatter and fatter and fatter until, much to his surprise, he floated up into the air. "I can fly!" shouted Hojo. "You turned into a hot air balloon!" exclaimed George. "Now, with the birds' help, you can fly to Japan if I can keep you from laughing." When Hojo had been fitted with a basket to carry George, they set off, and soon they were floating high above the clouds. "Try to hold your breath until we're over land," shouted George as he called out sad story after sad story. Over Japan, it was bitterly cold. The whole country was so deeply buried in snow that there was no sign of the emperor or his palace. To cheer Hojo up, George told him a joke about a cabbage with cauliflower ears. Hojo laughed, his hot breath escaped, and he became smaller and smaller and smaller until he drifted into the snow. George and the birds were glad they had Hojo's warm breath to protect them from the icy cold. As George kept a steady stream of jokes, the snow started to melt. Before long, with George telling every joke he could think of, Hojo had melted a tunnel down to the palace where the emperor and his family were blue with the cold. "We missed you," said the emperor, "and especially your hot breath." Hojo quickly made some hot soup and had everyone warm and happy before you could say, and I can't even say this, "Maris-Sarah-Donda-Data-Doda toast." Mares eat toast stand does not eat toads. I don't know. Thank goodness no one asked for turtle soup, thought George. Hojo was so happy he didn't stop laughing until winter was completely gone. As he melted the snow, the ground became covered in flowers, trees blossomed, and birds sang in the branches. There were no more complaints from the courtiers, and when one of them passed, George would call out, "A chuckle a day keeps the snow away." The emperor presented George with the Grand Imperial Medal and appointed him Imperial Storytelling and Breath Controller, with the job of controlling Hojo's breath. From that day on, Hojo's flames were kept in check by George's stories. But whenever he felt like a good laugh, George told his funniest jokes, and Hojo put on a spectacular display of fireworks. And there is Hojo, the laughing dragon, and George the turtle roasting marshmallows.